What's up, everybody? Welcome to the CanesInSight Daily Podcast, powered by Andrade and Levine Accident Attorneys. This is Breakfast with the Canes. Good morning, Saturday morning. Hope you're having a good Father's Day weekend. Just kind of sitting and waiting, right, for some news from this recruiting weekend. It is going to be an absolutely huge weekend with some very interesting names. We went over that in the bank yesterday. Also, the official visit kind of overview on Thursday. So that's all in the archives. But Miami's got a new strength and conditioning coach, Ervin Young. A lot going on. Cam Ward continues to dazzle. Just a lot of things going on. Get in the comments. Get your questions in. It is Breakfast with the Canes and is one of my favorite days of the week. We work on Saturday. You know who else works on Saturday if they need to? That is Andrade and Levine Accident Attorneys. If you or someone you care about has been injured in an accident, you could be entitled significant compensation. Dial 1-800-747-FREE, 1-800-747-3733. Take back control of your life with Andrade and Levine. Pete, hop in here.
D, good morning. I got to say, the shocker here is that Joel Ervin thought he had the Pete Big Irv nickname in the bag until we saw the guns on Coach Ervin Young there, huh?
Hey, man, I heard he's I don't know if he's a plant-based eater or a plant-forward eater, but clearly the guy's got the right diet. Check out the guns there, filling up the sleeves. I'm fired up here just because I didn't really want a major change. I thought our team was starting to look bigger and stronger. You saw how we've been pushing around teams when necessary. Obviously, defense, the problems there were a lot of confusion, coverage. I didn't think pure physicality was an issue. Now, look, most of the strength and physicality of your team comes from recruiting, right? We've talked about it, body types. That's 99% of it. But look, you got to have first-class strength and conditioning. And I think Ervin Young, he was at Miami earlier with Mario and Feld. So he knows the players. Well, he knows I don't know if he knows all these players, but he knows generally what's going on out there. He certainly knows Mario and his pace and the things that need to get done at Miami, knows the program, and he's not a Feld disciple, so he's going to come with his own approach, but he has the familiarity. Plus, he was at Tennessee last year, so he's been at a big-time SEC program and now returning to a big-time ACC program here.
He was here earlier this year, D. He was here earlier this year, right. So he knows these guys. So I would think he has a pretty good understanding of the roster. I saw a lot of the guys on the team commenting, reposting when it was announced, and they seem pretty fired up. So the one thing I'll say, I'm not saying this wasn't the case with Feld. I haven't heard this from any player, right? But I know that previously, talking to former players, right, post Swayze era, you need to have a relationship with your strength coach. It needs to be someone you really trust and go to war for. You talk about that with a coach, but like you need to be able to go to battle in that weight room with this strength coach as someone that has to get the best out of you. Again, I'm not saying that was it with coach, that wasn't the case with Coach Feld, but talking to former players, that's the most important part of the strength coach. Don't worry about, yes, everyone has their methods, everyone has their background in their, the educational side of the weight room and training. And again, this is, it's a bigger thing than just working in the weight room, right? There's a whole protocol that goes into getting these guys where they need to be. But having that faith and belief and relationship with the coach, and early on, just talking to a couple people, this is someone that the guys on the team really, rally behind in that sense.
Yeah, 100%. Like you mentioned, Pete, he was here earlier, so there is that familiarity. This is something that, it's not like a sudden deal. Certainly all indications are this has been in the works for a while, and nothing is sudden or unfamiliar or really that risky, right? You kind of know what you're getting on both sides of the equation, which at this point in the program, I think you want, because again, strength and conditioning to me has not been a huge issue. I mean, this is the problems with this team have been, Van Dyke throwing interceptions, right? That has nothing to do with strength and conditioning. Mario and Dawson not calling for that kneel. That's not really strength and conditioning. The team being very confused defensively last year. That to me is not strength and conditioning. I don't think teams, Syracuse and Georgia Tech, it's not like Iowa State. It's not like they just lined up and were pushing our defense around.
Well, listen, D, let's go back because we have a lot of, the roster's in a better place now than when it was when Feld got here. But go back to the Texas A&M game on the road a few years ago when he first got here, right? And they didn't have those guys yet on the O-line that they have now, I think. And I thought they held up pretty well from a physical standpoint in that game on the road, for example.
100%. I mean, and then you look at Georgia or Clemson a couple years ago, pushing them around. I mean, really, the offense in general was a pretty bullyish offense. I mean, they were top 5 in the nation in yards per carry. They were the best team in the Power 4 in avoiding negative plays, right? So, they were going forward. They weren't going backwards. Offense, I didn't see any strength and conditioning issues. And then defensively, really, it was other issues, more mental, I think, and just kind of athleticism, coverage stuff than physicality. Now, I would attribute most of that to just recruiting bigger guys, but I didn't see a gap in our strength and conditioning. So we got a question about the background of Ervin Young. So let's pull up his bio. But basically, I think his most experience comes from the University of Missouri, where he had 2 seasons before coming to UM. Then he left to work for Tennessee for a year and come back. Actually, so I take that back. His longest tenure was at Kansas. Director of S&C. There you go. He played for Cumberland, running back.
He was a running back. Yeah.
Yep. And got his master's degree in sports exercise pedagogy, certifications, all that kind of stuff. I saw on Twitter that he had really a horrible situation where his house burned down this year. He had like a GoFundMe. Thankfully, his family was safe and dog and all that, but house burned down. It's not an ideal situation. Obviously, ends up coming to Miami.
We gotta get some inside info from our boy Eric McLean. I'm gonna pull this up real quick. He said, because McLean goes, here he is. He says, "Showtime, let's go." Whenever he visits campuses, he does a workout with some of the strength and conditioning coaches. So he maybe has he probably knows Coach Young here. So maybe we gotta hit up Eric there. I know that's your boy. So
yeah, we will. That's a good idea. But I mean, again, I think this is all about continuity, right? Don't reinvent the wheel. Have familiarity with the players, like you mentioned, the most important thing, and keep the train moving. Because you know what's going to help, Pete. You know what's going to help our strength and conditioning of our team. Recruiting guys that bench 500 pounds and do 475 with their hands close together. So yeah, I think that's going to help our strength and conditioning pretty well. The rest is going to be just, not screwing it up, in my view, and keeping it at a big time level.
Yeah, without a doubt. And again, it doesn't surprise me that, you hire from within. When he came back, he was brought in as the assistant, essentially, or the associate, I should say, was the word they use, associate strength and conditioning coach. So I'm not saying that he was brought here to replace Feld, but you gotta put people in place that you feel like can eventually take that step. And obviously Mario feels like he can be that guy in this role.
Yeah. And, you kind of reported a little bit on Feld that this was just long time coming, nothing like sudden or unusual. It's just kind of one of those things where I guess the parties grew apart in their approach, and it was time for a change, which again is not uncommon. I mean, really not uncommon under Mario. There's not it's never a mirror ball. No one really sticks around too long, but it's not like those guys just are disasters. They usually get pretty good jobs right after. And
Coach Woodle's gotten a nice little streak right here with Mario, right? He's been with him for a minute.
Yeah, you're right. Coach Woodle, from what I understand, there was like a story that it was public, so I don't think I'm breaking any code here, but that someone dressed like an Oregon Duck.
That was on Kevin Clark's show. This is Football, when he had Mario on, I believe. Remember that interview where Mario was pretty revealing, more revealing than most interviews. So
yeah, shout out to Kevin Clark. But yeah, it was somebody dressed like the Oregon Duck to help recruit Penei Sewell. I think that
Penei,
was
yeah.
So he's
what it was? The story was the mascot, I guess, can go on the road and recruit and be someone that basically is like an extra coach. They had to put him as like an extra coach or something like that to validate the, and make sure it wasn't a rules violation. It was the story was funny, but yeah, he's a trenches guy for Coach Criswell. Coach Stephen Field's been with him for a while too. I know he had the little stint at, I think, Louisville in between, but he was at Oregon with him, and then he's obviously been at Miami with him too.
Yep. So, we'll see how the staff comes together. I think ultimately having Dawson for his third year now, right? Third quarterback, but third year, that's going to lead to tremendous continuity on the offense, not to mention the confidence, right? That, you had a huge turnaround your first year. Second year, you were the best offense we've ever seen. And now he's going to his third year. So I think that offense should be running like a machine. Beard also has a lot of continuity. Woodle, you mentioned. Mirabal, you mentioned. Merritt is in his second year, but certainly has a lot of credibility with the way the running backs played. So, offensively, I expect that thing to keep humming. This strength situation looks pretty much as internal as you can get, considering that he was elsewhere last year for the most part. And then defensively, we'll see, man. But ultimately, I think it's all about recruiting. There's people that get real crazy about strength and conditioning. A lot of people have maybe a little bit of expertise or a lot of expertise, and they post on message boards and they have opinion. Everybody thinks the other guy sucks. That's what I've learned about strength and conditioning coaches. Everybody always thinks the other guy's terrible and a hack. I've seen it since the beginning of strength and conditioning coaches being discussed on the internet. So, I don't know. Maybe they're right. I really don't know. I don't have the expertise to comment on that.
Bring back Swayze.
Yeah. Or, this guy, like it's just
Tommy Moffitt,
certifications BS, or, it's all these things. I know this. When you recruit big guys with big bodies that are twitchy and explosive, they tend to be pretty powerful on the field. Bush Davis did it. Now Mario's doing it, and we're starting to push teams around. And I think that has a lot more to do with the recruiting part than the strength and conditioning part. But look, shout out to Ervin Young, a big opportunity for him, and seems to be pretty excited about the opportunity.
I guess since we're on the topic of, or go ahead, D.
No, just pull in some comments.
No, Brian Taylor says, I think that the guys are getting stronger, but the fast guys need to stay fast even when they add weight. That's the magical formula that you're looking for, right? Get bigger and faster. It's a tough thing to do, man. But a lot of it's body type. Man. Some guys just, and you guys laugh at me when I use that word. I use it a lot. But some guys do not have the frame or the body type to be able to put on weight sufficiently and keep their twitchiness, keep their quicks, and vice versa, man. If you want guys to lean down, they're going to lose. Some of them just aren't built to have both, unfortunately. So you got to keep recruiting the guys who can. I think receiver room is one of those rooms that you need more of these types. Linebacker room, you need more of these types. D-line, I think you're getting closer, but still not there. But recruiting is what it boils down to.
Yeah, look, I mean, you recruit Jeremiah Smith. I'm pretty sure he'll stay fast as he gets bigger, and he's pretty big and fast coming in. So, oh, here we go. We got some inside info from EJ. My boy played with him at West Connecticut. I do believe he's seen a lot through his years from D3 to the U. So, yeah, good info there as far as the transition. I like
these guys who were. It reminds me of Coach Heatherman has a similar path up, right? I mean, Coach Young's worked at a bunch of places now, but it's not a guy who played at a big SEC school or anything like that, and just kind of started right within the program, as an assistant strength coach. He was the guy who worked his way up. So,
yeah, learning different things. Here's a truth over false. Good morning, fellas. Usually listen to you at work in my earbuds. Now listening to you as I'm door dashing, waiting for an order. Appreciate you, truth over falsehood. So
hopefully you're picking up some Islas Canarias Express.
Oh, you alley-ooped me there for the plug. Let's do it now. Why not? It's breakfast. You guys got time. It's 9:03. Head over to Dayland Dining Pavilion, man. Get yourself some croquetas. 7 different types. You get 2 crackers. You put them in a little sandwich, and then you eat that. Kind of like the Jamaicans. I know they like to get the patties and put it in between cocoa bread and have that one. If you want the Cuban experience, just get the croquetas, one of 7 different varieties, all voted best in Miami, which means best in the world. Get 2 crackers, put it in there, eat it like a sandwich. That's how you get it done, Cuban style. But yeah, I noticed that Jamaicans do kind of the same thing. It's just replace the crackers with cocoa bread, and then put the Jamaican patty in the middle. So
that's interesting. You got the double. It's like double carbs, double bread in between there. Interesting.
Yeah. But We got plenty of cars and about empanadas and patties. If you like Jamaican patties, you'll love Cuban empanadas. So if you're not obviously Cuban, you know all this stuff. If you live in Miami, probably you know all this stuff. But if maybe you're Jamaican and you want to try some Cuban food, go out there, try these empanadas, take them to go, broaden your horizons a little bit. Right there in the Dayland Mall dining pavilion.
Truth over falsehood, saying what you said earlier. Our problems have been coaching and recruiting, not strength and conditioning.
100%, and just confusion, right? I mean, I think that's when you look at the more I kind of zoom out of 2023 and 2024, it's confusion hurt us both years, right? Where the interceptions in 23, the quarterback didn't know where to go with the football. And then, of course, the Georgia Tech debacle. And then 25, just the defense, it wasn't a fit. Like we've seen defenses that were physically overwhelmed, right? This was not that. This was confusion, just not knowing where to go. Defensive line, shifting, playing games, just kind of all over the place, but not being very effective. And there's two sides of it. One is that's a fixable issue. It's harder to fix, talent, easier to fix those kind of things. You got a new defensive coordinator, just had a top 10 defense. But the other part is, you were confused in 23. Really, you were confused in 22 as well, because you had an all NFL defensive backfield and an NFL defensive backs coach, and your defensive pass coverage was the worst in the country almost. So really you've had confusion kind of all 3 years, so that if you're being a naysayer, you say, well, maybe this is just part of the program there, is that you're going to be confused in one aspect of your team. The optimistic view is you can fix it, right? These are fixable things. So I think you've done everything you can to fix it by adding a guy like Heatherman that's going to simplify things and let these guys go to work, particularly when it comes to defensive line and moving around. But it's not guaranteed. So we'll see what's going on. Here we go. We got here we go. This is a great one. Let's talk about this real quick. I wanted to get to this, but I've seen it here. Hannah and Brett.
Shout out to Brett Palm, by the way, who said he's my father earlier. It's like, that's my buddy from college, man. Is this your first Father's Day, Brett, or the second one? Happy early Father's Day to you, Brett. Ask about Jake Garcia here.
I thought it was Hannah saying that. So, all right, Brett, shout out to Brett. You say, what's with Jake Garcia being crystal ball to Michigan? So this one's interesting. So, it's funny. People are going nuts about this because obviously Jake Garcia struggled here, had a great spring, man. His first spring here, I was like, man, this guy could be something. And then, remember that spring game? He has like 11 for 12, looked pretty good. Then really just struggled. I think athleticism hurt him quite a bit. So he goes to East Carolina. Really, he starts, but he doesn't perform very well. Throws a lot of interceptions. He was on a good team. East Carolina was actually pretty good last year, but his interceptions really hurt the team. Goes back in the portal. Now going to Michigan, right? So people are saying, what is going on here? I think what you're seeing is teams are much more willing to get veteran players to be depth as long as they don't cost a lot. That's really, I think, what we're talking about here. Is if you can get a guy who's played college snaps, and he has played those both at the Power 4 level and at East Carolina, and he's going to be cheap, pretty much, I'm assuming free, and he'll be able to run your backup offense, maybe run your scout. At least,
and he has 2 years of eligibility from what he said the other day. I saw when he tweeted, so that's always an enticing thing for a program. Now I'm sure he's doing this as a potential stepping stone. Have a good year within the program, maybe see some time, in mop up duty, or if there's injury, and kind of rebuild his image somewhat, so that next year, the Michigan coaches can tell other coaches, look, this guy did everything we asked of him within the program, and maybe gets another opportunity as a starter somewhere down the line.
Yep. So add him just to kind of be that steward of, really, to me, I think the backups. You look at Michigan, you got Mikey Keene, your projected starter from Fresno State. He's an experienced quarterback, has had some production, played well enough against Michigan when they played to earn that offer and to get a chance to start. And of course, had the number 1 player in the country, Bryce Underwood. So I think Jake Garcia there is looking at number 3 in the depth chart and just holding it down. And you look at Ohio State. They brought in this quarterback that was playing in Hungary. that was like an FCS player and like wasn't a standout FCS player. They brought him in. You see Ole Miss bringing in a million different quarterbacks. I think teams are jumping at the chance to add veteran depth without paying for it. So that's what you're seeing with these quarterbacks. Miami doesn't have that, but I think they want to keep those snaps for Luke Nickel, and that's what the game plan is there.
Truth Over Falsehood had this question. He says, question, guys, if Beck goes first round after Ward went first round, how do you think that will affect QB recruiting for us? We traditionally never get the top dog QBs, but lower tier. I think we'll get whoever we want out of the portal next year if that happens. I think you'll get the top available guy, and I don't think that they'll stay within the roster if that happens, quite frankly.
Yeah, and again, this is my belief, and I don't expect everybody to agree with me, but I think it's pretty much a waste to go after these top quarterbacks ranking-wise, right? I think when you get to the top 3 quarterbacks, like that legit 5-star top 3 in the country, the evaluations get better. Not perfect. You saw DJU, but they get better. But those guys transfer too, right? I mean, Quinn Ewers was that, and he transferred. Julian Sain, the quarterback for Ohio State, was that, and he transferred. Jaden Daniels was that, and he transferred. Bo Nix. So those are top 3 quarterbacks that transferred. Ended up being good players, certainly in the case of the first 3 guys, but for another team. So to me, I don't see the point, unless it's an Arch Manning or a Trevor Lawrence kind of generational situation where the guy wants to go to your school and you have a chance to get him. I don't see the value in paying for a high school guy that's likely going to bust. The chances are that they're either going to be a bad player. We just talked about Jake Garcia, who was a top 10 quarterback. They're either going to be a bad player or they're going to be a good player for someone else. So why are you going to spend millions of dollars on that kind of volatility when you can get a guy like Cam Ward, who's already good, pay him a lot, and you get the number 1 overall pick? Carson Beck, you pay him a lot, but I mean, I think everybody in the country has him as a consensus top 10 quarterback in the country. How often does Miami have a top 10 quarterback in the country? I know we just had Cam Ward, but I mean, go back before Cam. How often is Miami having a top 10 quarterback in the country? Maybe De'Ara King, who again was a transfer, he was already good. So I wouldn't waste my time with expensive high school quarterbacks. That to me is overrated to the extreme. Give me a guy with some traits in high school. You got to still recruit high school quarterbacks. But give me a guy that's athletic, that plays multiple sports, that has good intangibles, and hope they can develop. And if they do, you got a homegrown guy. Otherwise, just keep hitting that portal. And to answer the question, if you get, like you said, Pete, and you said this directly, if Carson Beck has a great year, every portal quarterback in the country is going to want to come here. So, that's going to be wide open. And people are saying, oh, well, Carson Beck was kind of a Hail Mary, right? We got him late in the process. You could have easily had Fernando Mendoza early in the process, and Fernando Mendoza is getting first-round buzz. I was just talking to somebody who works with an agency, and the agency, which is one of the more prominent agencies in America, is treating Mendoza like a first-round pick. Now, that doesn't mean he will be a first-round pick, but Pete, you know how those agencies work.
I'd be pretty surprised if he's not a top 100 pick, man. I mean, I'd be pretty shocked at this point. So if you have a top 100 pick at quarterback, you should be in a pretty good position to win a lot of games. So,
yeah. So that to me is where I would like to live in that market, right? Either Mendoza or Beck. Those are your choices, and they know how to play, and they're good. So not only are they talented, like for the NFL, they already know how to play.
And this is obviously a common concern amongst a lot of fans. Vic Vassell says, we can't keep getting portal QBs every year. Look, man, I think if we're talking about the success, it may not be number 1 overall pick Cam Ward, but if Beck solidifies himself as a first rounder again, the recruiting pitch is like, man, we've done it the last couple of years. Why aren't we going to do it again this year? So it's easier to sell that than more based off like a 1-year situation. I'm sure other programs are saying, oh, look, it was a 1-year thing with Cam Ward. It's not going to happen again with Beck. It's a fluky situation. But if you do it 2 years in a row now, I don't know how you can argue it.
Yeah, and look, here's a very plausible situation. Let's just say CJ Bailey, who I thought was excellent as a freshman, takes a step forward as a passer, continues to run and had showed incredible leadership and IQ. Let's say he takes a step forward as a passer, but NC State continues to lose players to the portal, which they did. They were a net loser in the portal the last 2 years, definitely this year. If you're CJ Bailey, you say, all right, my team is bleeding guys out in the portal. I'm projected to be an NFL pick. Why wouldn't I go to Miami and just play behind a good offensive line, a good running game, and do my thing?
Vic says Texas, Ohio State, Georgia, etc. usually go through high school. Two of those teams' QBs last year were portal guys, man. So it's
well, let's go through it. So George. So okay. So Ohio State, Justin Fields was the portal. CJ Stroud was high school. That was a good one. Last year they won the national. They had Cal McCord was high school. He left. They brought in a transfer quarterback, Will Howard. They won the national championships. That's Ohio State with the transfer quarterback. They have a transfer quarterback right now in Julian Sain as their starter. Georgia won 2 championships with Stetson Bennett, who was a JUCO transfer, not high school. Then they got Carson Beck from high school, but he transferred to us. And now they got Gunnar Stockton, who's an expensive high school player, who I personally think is average as grits. He stinks, in my opinion. But we'll see how he does. Texas just had Quinn Ewers, who was transfer. So, I mean, if you look at the NFL draft, and I use this example all the time, I'm going to pull it up right now. Some people might be annoyed because I do this all the time, but your quarterbacks drafted 2025. All right, these are all the quarterbacks drafted in 2025. Let's just go through the list here, and you tell me where these guys came from. Cam Ward, number 1 overall pick, Miami Hurricanes, portal. New York Giants, first round pick, Jackson Dart, portal. New Orleans Saints, Tyler Shuck, second round pick, portal. Number 92 pick, Jalen Milroe, high school, but not a top 100 player. He was like a low 4-star. Cleveland Browns, third round, Dylan Gabriel, portal. Cleveland Browns, Shedeur Sanders, portal. Kyle McCord, Syracuse, portal. Will Howard, Ohio State, portal. Riley Leonard, Notre Dame, portal. Graham Mertz, Florida, portal. Tommy Millott, Montana State, FCS. I don't think he was a portal, but he was FCS. Cam Miller, same thing, FCS, North Dakota State. Curtis Rourke, Indiana, portal. Quinn Ewers, Texas, portal. That's every quarterback that was drafted in this draft. Every single one. I didn't skip a guy. I mean, what more can I say? That's what it is right now. So to me, I think if you're the best team, last year, getting Caleb Williams, Jalen Daniels, Michael Penix, Bo Nix, all portal. So to me, if this is the world you're living in,
I think the ideal situation is you get a guy, hopefully, who has a couple years eligibility, but that's not always going to happen. If you get a guy, he's probably going to want to come in, ball out, and get to the next level. I mean, that's Miami's sell right now, right?
Yeah, and look, you can get guys in the portal that are long-term guys. That's the other thing I think is that, you don't have to just get portal guys that are one-and-dones like Beck or Ward. You can get a guy that was a 5-star that goes, let's say, I'm just going to use an example. This is not me. This is based on zero information. I'm just trying to give you an example. Zero information. Let's say Tavion St. Clair, I think it was the number 2 quarterback in the country. He goes to Ohio State. Let's say Julian Sain has a good year. He's like, Big Ten freshman of the year, right? They go to the playoff for Ohio State. Julian Sain is not like a physical specimen. He's probably going to be a 3-year college player because he's just not that. He's more of a college player than a pro, just body wise. So let's say Tavion St. Clair goes, okay, well, Julian Sain is going to start. I'm not going to start. So I'm jumping the portal. And Miami can go and get Tavion St. Clair. Now you got him as a redshirt freshman next year, top number 2 player overall in the country, and you didn't pay a ton of money. So you can do it like that as well. And I would say this ahead of time. It's June 14, 2025. My prediction for this season is when you looked at the 2025 high school recruiting class for quarterbacks, it was legitimately the best class I've ever seen for quarterbacks, talent-wise. I'm not an expert, but I've been following recruiting for 20 years plus. That was the best class I've ever seen, really more 25 years probably. That was the best class I've ever seen for quarterbacks. All of these guys were super talented, put up huge numbers, big guys, basketball players, athletic, huge arms. But when you have a class that's that loaded, they're not all going to be able to play right away. So you're going to have guys that have talent that go in the portal, and you can grab them for multiple years, like a Jalen Daniels, who was a multiple-year starter for LSU, Bo Nix, who was a multi-year starter for Oregon.
Jaden Daniels.
Jaden Daniels. So, you can get those guys. So to me, I think it's look, you have to get high school quarterbacks, but get high school quarterbacks that have big upside, that are not expensive. That to me is what it is. Eventually one of them hits and you're feeling good and you pay them to stay. But you don't waste your time with these guys. Here's what 26 says. He goes, those schools also have highly rated guys coming in each year. Portaling for a starter is fine. Bigger issues potentially hurting wide receiver recruiting if your floor is someone like Emory, in my opinion. Now, listen, Emory would not be the kind of guy I would get in high school, because I think you swing big in high school. Like, you swing for guys that could be awesome if it hits, as opposed to someone who's probably more of a game manager, safe profile. So I'm not saying I agree with the guys that we took for how I would approach it. When we talk about Ohio State and those guys having highly rated guys coming in every year, what happens now when there's a salary cap and you have to kind of make choices? If you're Ohio State, or if you, let's say Miami, would you choose between getting those highly rated quarterbacks that get beat out by the portal guy that you bring in anyways? Or do you spend that money on defensive line or cornerback or wide receiver? I know what I'm doing. And, again, in this era, does having a highly rated quarterback help your wide receiver recruiting? Yes, sure. I can also tell you what helps your wide receiver recruiting is paying your wide receivers recruits. That's what really helps your wide receiver recruiting. Quarterback, at the end of the day, who was the quarterback going to Ohio State when Jeremiah Smith went up there? The guy that threw to him was a transfer.
Yeah, and they didn't have Sayin was in the Alabama class at that point.
Yeah, it's money, it's track record. Those are the things that really matter to these wide receivers. I'm not saying quarterback recruiting doesn't help, but it's in 2025, a blip, not a big deal.
I'm gonna look it up just for the sake of it. Make sure we're not missing anyone here.
Brian Taylor saying, yes, we have to do a better job at high school quarterback evals. I agree, but high school quarterback evals are hard.
They had Aaron Nolan in the class, D.
Aaron Nolan, where's he at?
But that's not the debate.
Well, it is the debate.
It's not. I agree. Listen, I agree with your QB thing, but you said who'd they have in the class? He was a highly rated QB at the time.
Aaron Nolan, first of all, he was no chance to start, because obviously they brought in the transfer immediately. In fact, I believe they brought in the transfer like a week after Jeremiah Smith signed. It was like,
yes, but again, this is what you said was who was in the who was the high, they didn't have a highly rated quarterback in the class. They did. So that's a little bit of
who was a bum and left immediately because the transfer that they brought in.
Playing I know, but
they were recruiting transfers. They were recruiting transfer quarterbacks at the time. You think Jeremiah Smith went to Ohio State because of Aaron Nolan?
I'm not saying that's the case, but I'm just telling you he was a highly rated guy.
Aaron Nolan had 0.0% impact on Jeremiah Smith going to Miami. And by the way, if we wanted Aaron Nolan, we could have got him out of the portal for peanuts, because Aaron Nolan's not good. Half of these high school quarterbacks are not good. 25% of them are good in transfer, and then less than 25%. I'm talking about just at the top guys are good and stay. As Arab said here, he went because Heartline developed receivers. That's the bottom line. That's why he went. Plus, they paid him a lot, which we tried to pay him too, but we didn't have the proven track record of development. Now, Brian Taylor's a good point here, and I agree with him here. He said Emory and Judd over Mendoza and CJ Bailey. How'd that happen? I think that I agree with you. And I think one thing that I've learned, Brian, is when you have a South Florida quarterback that has measurables, and I'm talking about they're over 6'2", right, or 6'3". They have some athleticism to them. And then they're legitimate power 4 prospects, right? Those guys tend to be pretty successful. For whatever reason, I think partly because South Florida high school quarterbacks are underdeveloped. So when you get a guy with some traits, they tend to do pretty well. Of course, Teddy Bridgewater, Lamar Jackson, what's his name? Jacoby Brissett, Geno Smith. All these guys that play in the NFL. Tyler Huntley plays in the NFL. Mike White, guys like that. Usually when they have enough physical stature and traits, and they have that power 4 talent, at that time power 5, they tend to make it. The latest examples being the two guys you just mentioned, CJ Bailey and Fernando Mendoza. And you can look at CJ Bailey in high school and you say his motion is kind of weird. You can look at Mendoza and say he's just raw. I believe I was the first guy to say he was a D1 talent. The perception was he was an Ivy League guy pretty much his whole high school career. So you got to project a little bit, but I'd like to have those guys in the system and then have the security of a portal guy on top, so you don't have to rely on those guys. But if they develop, we're in good shape. Kyle saying, talk about Miss Evals. Isaac Brown may be the most explosive running back in college football this season. Yeah, I would like to have Lyle and Isaac Brown, that's for sure. But I think Lyle will be better than in the next year.
Don Vaughn says CJ Bailey will be our QB next season. I said that like 3-4 weeks ago. D, we both kind of agreed with that.
Yeah. Yep. So Don Long, interesting point here. He's saying Mendoza and CJ look better because they're playing and developing. Emory looked promising when he was playing week in and week out. My opinion, Pete, I want your opinion here too. I think the difference is with Mendoza and CJ Bailey, you have athleticism. With CJ Bailey, you could see it in high school. With Mendoza, it really didn't start coming out till his senior year. I made a post on CanesInSight about that back when he was getting recruited, committed to Yale. Is that, hey, he's starting to look more athletic. But I think with Mendoza, you watch him against like Auburn, you watch him against Miami. He's running around making plays off script. He's doing all those kind of things. CJ Bailey's running around, both with the same kind of height and size that Emory has. So I think that's the big difference between those two. Is they just, to me, have a little more fluidity and athleticism. But Emory, I think, in the role of being the backup, running the offense, being a game manager, being an elite intangible guy is gonna be a good role for him. But I do think that if I personally am trying to get high school quarterbacks, give me guys with traits, and then you say, yeah, they're not polished, and then you polish them up. Don't get bogged down. Like Joe Burrow could not throw when he got to Ohio State. Urban Meyer that when he first saw Joe Burrow, he's like, this guy will never play here. And then he developed because he was a great basketball player. He was a great athlete, and he just needed some polishing up. I would rather have guys like that than getting a polished guy out of high school. I think it's getting polished guys out of high school is extremely overrated, especially when they've had private quarterback coaching their whole life.
We've had a couple of comments here. Again, not to speculate too much on something that's so far away in the CJ Bailey, but people are saying he has a great relationship with the coach. He's not leaving unless the coach gets fired. Listen, if they go 6-7 again, I don't think he's staying.
Yeah, I think the problem with NC State is they're bleeding guys out of the portal.
A lot of portal losses this year, man.
So their best offensive player, who didn't really have a great relationship with Bailey, to be fair, at least on the field, Concepcion, he's out the door. Okay, they lose. I believe both running backs. I know one of them went to Cal, I believe. They lost their best offensive lineman, their best player, who was an offensive lineman, got drafted second round. If you look at the other side of the ball, their best linebacker, Kamal Bonner, who, according to the NC State boards, was probably their best young defensive player, he's now a Miami Hurricane. Their defensive backfield is all gone. Their nickels at LSU. Their safeties are at one of them's at USC. I forgot what the other one is. So, I mean, their whole secondary left, as 26 points out. So when you're bleeding players out of the portal and you're the quarterback, you're like, what am I going to do? You just have no chance in that. It's not like, hey, I'm going to ride with my boys. Your boys are leaving. So I think that's ultimately going to wear on CJ Bailey, unless it stops. Like maybe they win the ACC this year and everybody stays and they add players, who knows? But that's the situation I'm watching for that reason.
Birdstone Lightbody says money talks, Pete. Just saying, it goes both ways, my friend.
Yeah, we got money. We got money too. I think one other aspect of portal quarterbacks, why I'm so passionate about this issue, is experience is what matters at quarterback in 2025. It probably mattered in 1985 too, but it definitely matters in 2025. And I'll just give you all the examples, right? Who do we just go over in the draft? Those guys had so many snaps. Jaden Daniels, and Bo Nix, who were the 2 Rookie of the Year finalists, played more college football at quarterback than I believe anybody ever in the history of football, because they started as freshmen and they had the extra COVID year. So I don't think it's even physically possible to play more quarterback than they played. So they took all that experience and they were the 2 best quarterbacks in the NFL rookie-wise in year one. Michael Penix, incredible amount of snaps. Cam Ward is another guy. I believe he's comparable to Jaden Daniels and to Nix in that he played 5 years as a starter, 2 at Incarnate Ward, 2 at Washington State, and 1 at Miami. So 5 years as a starting quarterback in college. Tyler Shuck is the same age as like Joe Burrow. I mean, you got to have experience, man. So like a guy like CJ Bailey, we'll probably get a call for tampering for this podcast. But CJ Bailey goes to NC State to play right away, which he would not have played right away in Miami. But if you can get him, you get him when he gets experience. So that's a pretty good deal. So that's why I think we do that. Jake Campbell again says, this 1-year rentals hurts us in wide receiver recruiting, both high school and the portal. Nobody ever knows who's going to throw him the ball. First of all, you don't know if the freshman's going to throw him the ball either, because the freshmen 90% of the time suck or transfer. So the freshman that they come in with very rarely ends up throwing him the ball. If you look at just the results of top 10 quarterbacks, and I'll pull up I'll just pull up a random year. So those guys aren't throwing you the ball, number one. Number two, these guys are not stupid to the game. I was talking to Keys' agent when he was on his visit, and he's like, yeah, man, he knows he's going to have a quarterback here. You just had Cam Ward. You're going to have Carson Beck this year. I'm not worried about that's the least of his concerns. Now, look, player recruiting is a factor. You got that guy Faison, the number 1 player in the country, going to Tennessee. Keys is visiting Tennessee with that quarterback. So, yes, there is some of that because player recruiting. You
just said it didn't matter. You just said it didn't matter.
I said player-to-player recruiting always matters. It could be his friend that's a receiver or his friend that's a running back. Like when your friends are getting recruited by other schools, it helps with every position, not just receiver. There is some of that going on. But it's here. I'll pull up now. Let me pull up the player rankings here at quarterback for 2024. Okay. This is the 2024 quarterback rankings. Ready? This is the Jeremiah Smith year. Actually, no, let's do 2023 because 2023 they've had a couple years here. So these guys have had a chance to play. 2023. Are you ready, Pete?
Mm-hmm.
Number 1, Arch Manning. We'll see him this year. Number 2, Nico. Transfer. UCLA. Debacle. And he got paid millions to ruin Tennessee. Dante Moore. UCLA. Now at Oregon. Jackson Arnold. Oklahoma. Now at Auburn. Malachi Nelson. USC, now at who knows where he's at. Sacramento State, or is Jaden Rashada, ASU, then Florida, then Georgia, then Sacramento State. Aiden Childs, Oregon State, now at Michigan State. Austin Mack, Washington, now at Alabama. Avery Johnson, solid player for Kansas State. Christopher Vecina, backup Clemson. That's the list. That's the top 10 quarterbacks in 2023. So if you went to one of those schools because that guy was going to throw you the ball, you wasted your time.
I think it's more of a factor than you believe, but I can't argue with the results of what I'm not saying Miami should be trying to land those guys because of what we've talked about, but I also think that it has an effect on these guys, these receivers, even though it's pretty unlikely that they're going to be the ones throwing them the ball.
Well, let me just spell it out even further because now we're projecting forward, right? Now we're projecting to the new era. Let's assume there's some kind of cap. Obviously, there's furious efforts to get a cap in place. You're not getting the number 1 cop in MLB to enforce a cap if you're not going to do something to enforce this cap. I think it's all illegal and it's going to get overturned eventually, but it's going to be a reality for at least a little while. So let's say you got a cap. If you pay $2 million for a high school quarterback, that's going to impact your ability to pay the top receiver. So would I rather have a top high school quarterback to recruit a high school receiver, or would I rather just have money? I'd rather have money. And then you could use that. And if you're going to pay a quarterback that same amount of money, I want to know he's going to be good for sure. Instead of using a high school quarterback who has a 25% chance of playing for you at best to recruit a high school receiver. If I'm going to have that money, I'm going to spend that money anyways. I'm going to spend it on a quarterback that I know is good. It's common sense.
We talk about the new Canes baseball pickup.
Let's talk about it. This is new. So I had a text on this guy. I'm trying to find out. So So Michael Taylor, and this is, let me just, so this, I missed this yesterday. I was asleep. So shame on me for missing this one. But yeah, Michael Taylor transfers to the Miami Hurricanes. Let me just pull up some stats on him. There he is. Pitcher. You know, the story I got on this guy was similar to like a Carson Fisher, Will Smith, just a very veteran guy with some experience. He is someone who's played, someone who they feel good about, just the experience factor. Submarine pitcher. Yeah, I mean, I'm digging on this guy. So this honestly did not even know this was coming, but it was UNLV fastball 90 to 93, cutter 86 to 88, ERA 386, 21 innings, 27 strikeouts. So you like that strikeout rate. The walks are high, 13 walks in 21 innings, but just a different look, right-hander. I apologize, not a submarine pitcher. I don't know where I got that from. But over the top delivery, righty. And, a guy that can strike you out and can throw low 90s. But I think this is part of what this is getting somebody who will fill out the pen, fill out, maybe, give you more than that, but really just be a veteran arm like a Fisher was, like a Will Smith was in the pen that can eat up innings, has been there before, and he's not going to be your high octane guy, which I think we need probably somebody that's throwing 99, 98, 90, 97, because SEC teams have that. But, he's going to be a solid guy, and he knows what he's doing. So I would put him in the Will Smith, Carson Fisher category, which those guys helped you get to a super regional.
904 Hurricane says if Florida has a bad year and fires Billy, DJ Lagway would have to start over with a new system and probably never reaches potential in college like Anthony Richardson. Yeah, if Billy's fired, Lagway is not going to stay.
If Billy's fired and Lagway was in the portal, that's what I would take. I'm a Lagway guy. I know this is a controversial take with the Miami Hurricane fan base, Pete. I don't know. I want to get your thoughts on this, but to me, Lagway is good. He's big, fast with a big arm, but this guy was very productive in high school.
I don't think the offense does him much favors, man. I don't think the play calling is very good.
No, play calling is not good. His offensive line stinks. I mean, anyone voting Florida's offensive line, a top 10 offensive line in college football is a nerd. I mean, Pro Football Focus, I mean, talk about losing credibility. When they put out that offensive line list that didn't have Miami, Notre Dame, and Penn State, I mean, throw that list in the trash. It's just laughable. I mean, that's a joke. And they had Florida in there. So,
and by the way, another name that was just mentioned in the chat that I'm very intrigued by this year is Austin Simmons at Ole Miss. I'm not sure if he's the starter or how that competition is shaking out, but that's a guy who went into college really young. So, and I feel like he's like graduated or about to be graduated already from Ole Miss. So he'll be like 19, 20 years old with multiple years of eligibility left.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of interesting debate in the chat. Shout out to the chat, Birdstone, Williams Bacon, Detective Holmes. It's a good debate kind of when you're talking about Lagway, Austin Simmons, CJ Bailey.
Simmons can help our pitching too.
Yes, right. Well, two of those guys are South Florida guys. So again, we can't let these guys leave as much. I mean, not saying you bet the farm on them, but get them in the system, right? So Austin Simmons from Palm Beach, I believe he's from Pahokee, and then you get a guy like CJ Bailey from Chaminade. Those guys shouldn't be leaving town like they are. But those guys both are very good. Lagway, I don't know who I'll take. Again, I'm a Lagway fan. This guy was extremely productive in high school, and he had his moments. Character's good. He's smart. I was always an Anthony Richardson doubter. I never thought he was anything good at all. He made a couple plays when he was a freshman, like in spot duty. You're like, wow, man, this guy's physically gifted.
I mean, the Utah game too, he had some eye-opening plays.
But I mean, if you look at Anthony Richardson, look at his high school stats. This guy sucked. I mean, he was a bad high school player for his talent. I mean, legitimately not good. He made no impact. And then he goes to college and he doesn't do anything in college. So the Colts are idiots for taking him that high when he's never been good at any level. Lagway's been good. Lagway was dominant in high school and has made more plays his freshman year than Richardson probably made his whole career in real games. So Lagway, I put him in a different category than Richardson, other than comparable physical talents. So I would take Lagway all day. Richardson, I always thought the guy stunk. He just, one of those guys. Just Florida has guys that get hyped for no reason. Right now, it's their offensive line and defensive line. We all know they produce more busts than anyone on the planet. But I would not put Lagway in that conversation. I think Lagway actually is good. If I'm a Gator fan, I'm more concerned about the players around him because I just don't think their offense is very good around him, which is good for us. Here we'll see Arab saying, if you're a quarterback, which system do you go to? A Lane Kiffin Weiss system or Dawson? It's an easy decision. Well, I believe Dawson had the number one quarterback in the draft, the number one player in the draft. I believe Dawson had the number one offense in the country by a mile. So I'd probably go with Dawson. I mean, he had a top 10 offense with Houston before he had a top 10, a number one overall offense with Miami. So yeah, I'd probably go with him. I mean, who's Lane Kiffin developed? That's actually good. We'll see with Jackson Dart, how he does. Has Lane Kiffin developed a quarterback that I'm not aware of? Who's Lane Kiffin developed that I'm so impressed by?
Jackson Dart just went first round as well.
Yeah, no, Cam Ward just went number one overall. But I mean, like,
I get it. But the question you asked, I know. Well, the question you asked was
guys like, who's he developed? I'm trying to remember. I'm not be honest. Has he developed anybody?
Well, here's the thing. He's gotten a lot of production out of his quarterbacks in college, and at the end of the day, I think that's what we really care about.
Yeah, no. Listen, I mean, you're talking about if you're a quarterback, what system? I believe Lane Kiffin's system is not that conducive to pro development. That's been a criticism.
I would agree with that. Yeah, the track record is there for that.
And in fact, I think with Dawson, with one of the positives for Dart, they said that Kiffin did more pro style stuff than he usually does with Dart, so they looked at that as like a positive. But it's not like Kiffin's producing good pro quarterbacks. So, I mean, Shannon Dawson just had the number one quarterback overall. We'll see what Carson Beck does. I feel very good with Shannon Dawson if I'm a quarterback. Showbokane they're saying Dart looks horrible. I believe that. I don't trust guys that are like Mormon that are religious. You know what I mean? Like Zach Wilson was like he was from Mormon country, but he wasn't religious. I think Dart's kind of in the same boat. I don't trust those guys. If I'm getting a Mormon, I want that guy to be devout. I don't trust these kind of pretty boy guys from Mormon country. You can keep them.
I'm not gonna judge anyone's systems of belief or their worship.
I'm judging their systems of non-belief. That's what I'm judging. If you're Mormon country, if you're coming from BYU country, I think Dar's committed to BYU. You better be devout. You better be devout. That's what I'm saying. Kyle's saying it's similar to Hispanics who don't speak Spanish. Didn't work out for our coach, that's for sure. 904 saying with Florida's offensive line, Florida center Jake Slaughter is supposed to be one of the best in the nation with 3 other returning linemen. So it's returning production and Slaughter that creates hype. Still doesn't make sense. I mean, I agree. Listen, returning is good, but you got to be a good offensive line that's returning. And their offensive line was not good last year. They didn't run the ball well. I think they were in the 50th in yards per carry. They didn't protect very well. Their quarterback went to the hospital after we played them. So, I mean, you can return guys that stink. It's probably going to stink. Slaughter's okay. I don't think he's that good. I saw Anthony Moten getting in the backfield at will when we played him. So, Slaughter's fine. They didn't do anything against us.
Ahmad Moten, I'm
sorry. I don't see too much there with Slaughter that gets me too excited. I know that our offensive line, which completely bullied Florida, with Noah throwing Tyreek Sapp out of the club repeatedly, he's back. So, I feel pretty good. Oh, Rico's saying that I'm on one today. Yeah, man, I don't know. I'm fired up for some reason. The Gators, man, all this hype and BS and Lane Kiffin, like all the usual things that piss me off are coming up. Shout out to Natasha, the best bowler in Miami-Dade County.
She's saying hello to Honey, is what she's saying.
That's right. There's Honey. Yeah, shout out to Honey comments as well. Honey's keeping quiet today.
Well, I had to mute myself a couple of times. The mailman came, a lot of barking. She's working right now, so no one here to keep that thing under control. But yeah.
Let's see what's going on. Jay saying embarrass UF again this season. Yeah, man, hoping. Truth Overlord asking the big question. Do y'all think we have the necessary
truth over falsehood?
What I said, Truth Overlord?
I'm
it's early, man. It's early. He's saying, do you think we have the necessary talent to coach and make the playoffs this year? Do you see us losing the annual game to a high school team that we should never lose to, man? I wish I knew, man. It's the $1 million question. It's like the meaning of life. That's the one that we got to figure out. I don't know. I think we got the necessary talent. That's for sure. I mean, you bringing that back, this offensive line, when you have a top 5 offensive line, and I think that's pretty much a consensus aside from Pro Football Focus and the nerds who put that list together. I think most real people that watch the games without calculator will say that, Miami, Notre Dame, Penn State are the best offensive lines.
I'm just going to say this right now, D. If you send me a PFF link to show on the show this year, I'm going to tell you we can't do it. We're not using PFF anymore. You've gone really hard at them the llast few weeks here over this O-line thing, and you've completely taken their value away. So we can't use them on our program anymore.
Honestly, I may not be totally honest. I think they're good for certain things. I think they're good for like things that are easy to isolate, like drop percentage. They drop it or they don't, right? You just got to watch it and put the number down. Pass rush, I find them to be pretty accurate over the years. Like the guys that rate really high in pass rush win rate usually are the guys that are getting drafted high, that are like, I guess you can isolate. It's kind of a one-on-one matchup, tackle and who's getting to the quarterback, hurries. So they do stuff like that very well. And then where guys line up, they do that well as well. I just think like when it comes to units that need to coordinate like offensive line or like a defensive backfield, really those two, you get some weird ratings. Remember they had like James Williams, like the number 1 pass defense safety in the country, and now he's playing linebacker. I think it's because like those coordinated units, like again, DB, offensive line, where you don't really know what the calls are. You kind of don't know what their jobs are on that particular play. That's hard to me to do. Linebacker is a little bit like that too. Some other ones are easier to isolate. Like quarterback, I mean, they're highly rated quarterbacks are pretty much the best quarterbacks. Those are not that hard. But some of the other, they're not all created equal, is what I will say when it comes to PFF.
Kyle says PFF still has a stain with me when they ranked Tom Gore as a top portal DT a few years back. We could have used Tom last year.
Your boy, Mrs. Bullrush.
He was wrecking havoc against the Canes, man.
He was actually. But back to the big question from Truth about, do we have enough? I think, look, when you have a top 5 offensive line, pretty much consensus. When you have a quarterback that is a first-round talent that has played as many snaps as Carson Beck has played, an experienced, highly talented, proven quarterback, let's say. When you have a running game, which we were top 5 in the nation in yards per carry last year, you lose Damian Martinez, but you bring back guys that were also very productive. I mean, that offense should be good. Receiver is going to be a question mark, but there should be enough there to be a very good offense. Number 1, like we were last year with Cam Ward, no, that offense last year is going to be hard to beat ever. Defensively, you have 5-star defensive linemen all over the place. You have Ruben Bain, who's projected as either the best edge or one of the best edges in the country. You have experienced linebackers. You brought in, 7 figures worth of guys from the portal, 2 freshman All-Americas, a guy named Xavier Lucas who could have been a freshman All-America. You got to get something out of all that. I think you have a playoff roster. It's just, will they be able to do it? We'll see.
Albert C says Danny Cannell predicting we don't make a bowl this year and could start the season 2-3. I don't agree with the bowl thing. Is 2-3 out of their own possibility? I don't think it is, but I don't think that's what happens. But I don't think it's completely out of their own possibility.
Yeah, I mean, look, Cannell's he likes to poke. He's a big ACC homer, so he pokes the SEC, and he's a big Miami hater. He went to FSU, so he'll poke Miami. And he's from South Florida, so he likes to poke his boys because all his friends are Miami fans. He does a good job on the podcast. I get his shtick. I think what he's saying, and he's not just saying this to say it. I think what he's saying is he thinks that Beck will just not work. It'll be some kind of personality issue. He's not going to be Cam, which I don't think he will be Cam, and that pressure will get to him. And then it'll just kind of go sideways on Miami. He just saw it go sideways at Florida State, which went 2-10. So he's just predicting that to happen in Miami. I don't think it's impossible. Certainly if there's an injury or something, I don't think it's impossible. But I don't see it. I think Beck's veteran. I think he's underrating. He's overrating things like Beck being on TikTok, the pressure from Ward. He's underrating the experience that he has. I think that's why I would say. But look, I get what he's saying, and he's trying to provoke. Man, it's June. You say stuff like
this. There's some showmanship in there. You can see Bud Elliott's reaction when he said it and stuff. So Look, I think that it's not going to end up going that way. But listen, man, you've got in your first 5 games, you've got Notre Dame, Florida, and a rivalry in Florida State on the road. So it's it's not going to be easy.
Jake Campbell saying, how does Beck compare talent-wise with quarterbacks from Miami's past? Not on Wars level, how does he compare to TVDs of the world, Brock Berlin, Morris, Harris? I'll let you take the first crack at this one, Pete. This is an interesting question from Jake Campbell.
Let's not use our opinion. Let's look at what the opinion of a lot of people in the NFL was last year, which was going into the season, Carson Beck was a top 10 pick by most consensus. And I don't think that was ever the case for any of those other guys that we mentioned there. In terms of Ja'Cory, even when he was having his, great 4-game stretch to start the season and was getting the Heisman talk, I don't think anyone was ever like, this is a future NFL franchise quarterback. You look at same thing with, Brock Berlin had his great moments here, but I don't think he was looked at as a legit NFL guy, big time NFL guy at the time. You remind me if I'm wrong there, D, but that's my answer to it. Is the NFL is looking at it a certain way that I don't think they looked at any of these other guys. TVD, even with the mock drafts, and this is when I was in the heyday of my agency life, right? Like TVD in the NFL's mind was like a 3rd, 4th rounder at that point, not the first pick of the draft. He had a lot to prove. So even then, I think look, Beck has to get himself back on track here. Obviously, he's not a projected 1st rounder right now, right this second, but he can easily regain that status.
Agree totally, Pete. And look, Ghostface makes a good point here where he's saying, look, Brad Kaya was a top 10 pick. What's your point? He was a top 10 pick too. I think what Pete is saying, and I agree with him, is that
the mock drafts are different than, yes, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, there's like a media and there's like an NFL. So when I've seen people who have hyped Beck, all right, Rick Spielman, right? I'm talking about people in the media because the media is what we hear. We don't know exactly what NFL draft boards are because they're in the room. They're not out there. But Rick Spielman, who was a former NFL GM, spent a couple of years in media, and now has gone back to the Jets. So he is in NFL right now, but he had a year in the media. He said Beck was the best overall player last year going into the year. He then eventually had Cam Ward number 1. But then he said before he left to the Jets this year, and after Beck had picked Miami, he said he thinks Beck's going to be the number 1 overall player for the Hurricanes and the next year. And then now he's in the NFL. So that's a real NFL opinion. Daniel Jeremiah, former NFL scout who is really plugged in with the NFL, works for NFL media. He did a write-up on Beck before his senior year, or his last year, and compared him to Eli Manning. He said this guy's, got pretty much a complete skill set. I know a guy, a very high-ranking guy in a very legitimate, highly respected organization, and he's like, yeah, Beck's good. Beck is the real guy. So the NFL hype I've heard from Beck is more meat from NFL, whereas like with Kaya, Morris, Harris, TVD, a lot of that hype was more media-driven. And I think if I'm comparing all their skill sets, that's just what the player is. This is my opinion, but Pete, I think we talked about this offline. You agree? Size-wise, Beck is where you need to be. 6'4", he's got big legs. TVD had very good size as well. Ja'Cory had some size concerns. Morris wasn't as tall.
I was going to stop you on the Morris one. You said it was media hype with Morris. I think you need to take the dia part out of it. It was me hype with it.
Oh, I hyped him too, and Kaya. I got caught
That's
up.
That's what I'm saying. You hyped more. I mean, obviously, I hyped Kaya more than anyone, and I think his career is definitely forgotten about because of how it ended. It was really unfortunate that he had to deal with the QB coach situation, offensive coordinator situation, and he had to at the time because his career would have been thought of a lot differently. He did not have the mobility to be a top pick. I think that was when the NFL was already getting to that. You got to have some movement skills. And obviously he didn't really have that, but his Miami career is forgotten for reasons outside of his own power, I think.
Kaya, all-time leading passer in Miami history. He didn't get. I don't know if he didn't get along, but he didn't really. I don't think. And then maybe I'm putting words in his mouth, but my perception was he didn't respect John Richt as his quarterback coach, and I don't blame him because he probably knew more than his coach. So that led to him leaving early. If he would have stayed for that 4th year, and we had that great turnover chain year with him at quarterback, I think it would have been a different story. Maybe we wouldn't have had him. Maybe we needed Malik there. It's hard to say. But, I think that all impacted Kaya and how he was perceived. But Kaya was – I was the first to hype Kaya Morris, but I will say that I hyped them when they were 3-star recruits, and I think they both exceeded that ranking. And then when they started doing well, I think I overestimated their NFL projection. Once the media started kind of hyping him, I bought into that too. So shame on me.
Morris was good in the NFL. He bounced around in the NFL. He was with the Colts for a bit. He was a backup for a few teams.
Yeah, he was on active rosters.
Yeah.
I think if I'm comparing all these quarterbacks, though, by the way, we had 1,900 on here on this Saturday. Like and subscribe. First time we're saying like and subscribe about an hour and 5 minutes in. But, man, like and subscribe if you're not on this. We got 1,900 on. We're on every day. Ask about us in the chat, man. We're here every single day. So with Beck and these guys, I would say size-wise, I would say Beck and TVD are the two guys that stand kind of above the others. Would you agree with that?
Say it again. Sorry, I was
size-wise. Yeah, size-wise. That really is just Beck and TVD.
Beck, yeah.
I would say he's the best. Go ahead.
Beck's taller than TVD too.
Yeah, and he's got big legs. Not as thick upper body is, but he's big legs. I would say he's most athletic of all those guys. He's much more. You'll see this year, Beck is way more athletic than people think. He is going to be more mobile than pretty much all of those guys. Arm wise, I think he has the best arm talent. Morris had a very strong kind of whip-like arm, big hands, but he couldn't layer the ball as well as Beck. Beck can put the fastball on, but he can also kind of put the touch on as well. So I put that over all the other guys. And then IQ wise, major advantage over TVD. Probably similar to Kaya. But if you compare Kaya and Beck, I just think Beck is just way more athletic, twitchy.
Got Honey in the Honey's in the room now, D. So I gotta we're going over an hour here. She's starting to get restless.
She's chilling. When she starts barking, that'll be our cue. We got some questions we got to get to here. 904 saying Heatherman likes to run 3-down linemen with 4 standing. Who do you think is the one standing? Supposed to be a really athletic guy. So the way Heatherman runs his front is, so you got the hash marks in college, so you have the boundary in the field being the wider part of the field. So the boundary defensive end with the more compressed space is actually the one that stands up. The field defensive end is the bigger guy, likely because he can set the edge. He's just bigger, so he can kind of like set the edge. Because if you have a lighter guy there and they're getting pushed around, there's a lot of space on that side. So a bigger guy that can set the edge on the field, a boundary guy, more athletic guy, closer in the more compressed space. I believe this year, I know this year the plan is for Mesidor to be the boundary defensive end, with Bain being the field defensive end. Mesidor played linebacker in high school. He's comfortable standing up. I don't think he's prototypical there. I think it's just, of those two, he's the better option to stand. Malik Bryant, someone who's going to play in that spot. Marquise Lightfoot is someone who's going to play in that spot. Herbert Scroggins for the future, someone who's going to play in that spot. So those are some. Booker Pickett. I think that's what you're looking at as far as that boundary defensive end. Another question or comment here from Lord Baconton. He's saying, I think Keyshawn Stansel, defensive tackle from Raleigh, North Carolina, is going to be our next commit. 4-star. I think that's a good guess. I don't know about if he's the next one, but I could see him.
I would say Breck Kaloje pretty in soon as well.
Yep. Jake Campbell. Talk about intangibles between Ward and Beck. Ward is an alpha leader, but didn't come from a winning culture. Beck may not be the charismatic leader, but he comes from a winning culture, which is valuable. So I think Ward's intangibles are rare. I mean, to me, that was the best part about Ward, is how smart he was off the field, how smart he was on the field, and just the personality that he had and the demeanor. I think it's very, very hard to replace those intangibles. That's rare deal with Ward. So I think that's a concern, is that I do think there will be a step back from Ward to anybody, not to Beck. I mean, there's no one, I don't think, in the country right now that can replace what Ward had intangible-wise. I mean, he was that special of a guy. But what I've heard about Beck, like you said, he comes from a winning culture, so he knows what that takes. He's extremely experienced. He's seen the hardest environments, so that's not going to be an issue for him. He's very tough. If you watch his film, he's taking huge hits. He's not afraid to, he'll run and put his shoulder down. He'll wait till the last minute, throw the ball. Toughness is zero issue there. And I've heard he's extremely smart. I heard his IQ is actually very comparable to Ward. Leadership-wise, I've heard great things about Beck the last couple of weeks, just kind of getting more. Now that he's here more, you get more updates on him. I've heard he's fitting in very well. I think Ward's a unique deal. So I wouldn't want to compare him to Ward. But you compare him to like a TVD, I would say they're both not like super extroverted, but Beck is just, from what I've heard, well, he's a lot smarter guy in the football field. That I know I've heard from everybody, like not even close. And I've heard it's just, Beck's just a little cooler, I guess, for lack of a better word. I mean, the guy's just more comfortable in his skin. He's not a huge talker, but he's not like, he's very secure in his own skin. He's comfortable. He's from the Southeast. He's from Jacksonville, Florida. He's from Duval County. Shout out to all the Duval County people in the chat, Vaughn, everybody else. I know Duval is always well represented in our chat. He played at Georgia. He's not coming from Connecticut. So being in a school like Miami is not weird for him. He's pretty comfortable. So I think that all makes a difference.
Nashville Kane says Ward dropping F-bombs in his Titans media interviews. Got that 305. And I guess he hasn't listened to Orlando Franklin after the Virginia Tech game last year, his comments.
Oh, what did Franklin say?
He said he basically had a potty mouth and he needs to control himself better.
It's funny. I remember I listened to what's the podcast with Cameron and Mace? I remember Cameron.
It is what it is.
That was first of all, great show. He was loving Cam after he did that interview after it was at the Cal game, one of those games.
I think it was Virginia Tech. It
was Virginia Tech, right? It was Virginia Tech. Cameron was loving it. So people react differently to that, but that's how he is, man. Ward's not a faker. Ward is I don't know Ward super well. I know his parents pretty well, and I had a long interview with him, talked to them offline. I mean, we had 2 interviews with him, actually, and I spent a little bit of time with him offline. Again, I don't know him that well, but I see zero difference between how he is on camera versus how he is off camera. And his parents are just like that in a good way. I see no fakeness with any of those guys in the Ward family, and they're all good people, and everybody likes them. You're not going to hear a bad word about any of those guys from inside the building, which is rare. So that's what,
Sadon Long says you're tripping, D-Money.
Well, I'm giving Beck. I'm the only thing I said about Beck is I don't know if it's gonna be Ward, but I mean, I think I'm excited about Beck. I think Beck's gonna be great. A-Rab wants me to say Duval like Coach Liam Cohen did when he got to Jacksonville. Man, he got a lot of bad headlines for that. I'm not even gonna try to do that one. I'm not even gonna try. That's I'm not trying to get clipped up and put on the internet. 2,000 on this.
I don't know, man. If Miami doesn't beat Florida this year, you might be clipped up a lot.
I don't have to worry about that. Oh, Rico, how's Beck's accuracy? Great. I heard one player, very prominent offensive player, was saying man, he didn't want to say that Beck threw better than Ward or as good as Ward, but he was kind of ready to say it, So yeah, I think Beck in the pocket and Ward in the pocket are going to be extremely similar, if not Beck being better. And that's high praise because Beck, Ward is great in the pocket too. Ward outside the pocket, the creativity factor, the ability to see angles and do kind of the magical stuff, I think gives him an edge. But in the pocket, I think they're pretty similar. All right, Pete, we got 2,000 on it. Like and subscribe. Real quick before we get out of here, let's talk about that Father's Day special, man. You got 1 day left. Father's Day is tomorrow. I know you guys are scrambling to get presents. You got 2 very, very good options if you want to get your dad something. And by the way, they're not mutually exclusive. You go to MiamiHurricanes.com, get the Father's Day package, $75. Get 2 tickets to a game of your choosing, 2 hats all together. So 4 items in total, 2 tickets, 2 hats, $75 for one of those 3 home games, Louisville, USF, or Bethune-Cookman. I mean, what's better than that? $75. And also, if you go to the Miami Hurricane team store at MiamiHTS.com or in person across the street from the University of Miami, 20% off Father's Day items. So you can go to Miami HTS, get that one done. Miami Hurricane team store. 20% off. Plus, if you use promo code Insight20 on anything else, get 20% off your first item. And, we're going to plug in a couple days. Got to make sure we get this one, Pete. CanesConnection.com/CIS on Tuesday. So it's Saturday. On Tuesday, I'm going to be doing a Zoom call for Canes Connection/CIS. People who sign up with the CIS code, CanesConnection.com/CIS. You'll be getting access to a private Zoom with me on Tuesday. I'll give you the absolute latest on the visit weekend stuff I cannot say here on this show in public. This will be a private Zoom. Again, you go to CanesConnection.com/CIS. Make sure you get that /CIS, and you will get a link sent for that private Zoom on Tuesday, plus a million other perks and perks going forward, Zoom calls going forward. Be part of the solution right now, CanesConnection.com/CIS. 2000, baby. Like and subscribe. Saturday. These Saturday shows get hot.
Appreciate you, Jake, for hopping on here.
Yes, sir. All right, Pete. Is Honey ready for a walk?
I actually walked her before the show to avoid any issues, but she's still very excited. So,
all right, man. Well, listen, appreciate everybody in the chat. Like and subscribe to the show. Go Canes.
Go Canes.